All right, it is time for the John Riggins Show. Dexter, we need a hype man. I think I could be the guy. And we're featuring Dexter Manley. I'm Todd Castleberry, and it's time for the John Riggins Show. Here's Riggo.
Thank you, Todd. Oh, yeah, Superfly. Let's get into it. Dexter, you look like Superfly today. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Better than good, better than most.
I appreciate that. I woke up this morning feeling the same thing. I don't know what it was. I went to the doctor yesterday. He pumped my knees full of steroids, and I feel like a new man. My back, the whole deal, I'm going, I can't get over what's going on.
How's the arthritis coming along?
Well, I mean, today it's like, this is what I don't understand, Dexter. You got what they talk about, good days, bad days.
That's right.
I'm having a great day so far today.
So am I.
Well, that's cool.
Well, hell, let's do 2 or 3 hours then, fellas.
We can, as long as we can sit down. I don't want to tempt fate. You know what I'm saying? I get up and I say, oh, my back's all
You're like the Washington football team. You're having a heck of a day, a heck of a second half.
That's right.
Second half.
We've been resurrected.
Second half. Well, let's get you guys. Let's get your commentary and analysis. Riggo, what did you think?
Well, I think like everybody that watched this game, first of all, you got to. I don't know where to start because you got to kind of put it in perspective. I still can't imagine what it was like to play a game with no fans. I mean, and the fact that you fall behind by 17 points at home, but there is no home. You're not really getting any information, no feedback from the people up there, whether you're getting booed. I mean, it takes on a whole different dynamic in a weird sort of way. But having said that, I mean, you have to be pleased with what you saw. I mean, it's almost as good as it feels for Washington, it feels probably 10 times worse for Philadelphia. 'Cause I think Philadelphia came in here and just thought we'd just come in here and roll over these guys. They get up 17-0, which, used to be a team could hold on to a lead or something like that. Of course, I didn't realize this till I read the paper this morning that the same thing happened last year with the Eagles, except it was just reversed. Washington got up 17-0, and then they ended up giving the game back to Philadelphia. But all in all, I think the one thing you take away from it was the fact that this team somehow pulled themselves together and bit by bit got back into this football game and kept forcing. And really, it all goes to the defense. You can't say that the offense had a rousing performance by any stretch of the imagination, I didn't think. But they did enough. They did enough when the defense really did the bulk of the work, got the turnovers, held the Eagles, gave them 17 points early, and then basically threw the gauntlet down and said, that's the end for you today. And you got to give the offense credit. When they got the opportunity, they made those short drives count. I mean, what'd they have? I mean, this is one of the stats I thought, well, you don't see this very, very often. I think they had a 13-play, 49-yard drive. That's hard to do.
Right.
I mean, 13 plays, you're usually going 95 yards in 13 plays. But the point being is they saw it through. It wasn't pretty, but they got the job done. So I think it's good. But at the same time, you have to temper everything with, you go back to the days of Jim Zorn. Jim Zorn won, his first 6 games one year?
We were horny for Zorny, I believe.
Yep,
was the,
and then everybody,
was the mantra.
And it was a big tank job. So just everybody breathe easy. I mean, I'd be saying the same thing had they lost the game. But then again, you look at it. The bright side is they came back from being down. That's a good sign. That really is. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, there's a lot of football left to play, so you don't really know how it's going to shake out. And we can get into the actual individual play in here in just a second. But that's my opening salvo.
Yeah. Well, John, you're right on target. I tell you, I thought that the first half, the Redskins, the Washington football team,
that's going to be hard to break.
Yeah,
we might have to institute some type of fine. Maybe I'll have a Washington football Redskins jar here, and we'll figure it out.
Yeah, well, the Washington football team was inconsistent.
Very much so.
In the first half. And I think on that interception, the second half, the guy, that would turn the game around.
Remember when we asked Dexter, what are you going to be looking at on Sunday? He said, I want to see that front 7. Defensive linemen, those linebackers.
Yeah,
I mean, and
did.
That was the key to the game.
Right.
It's all said and done.
Right. Thank you. I think the front 4, they was relentless, and as Ron Rivera said, they want to play downhill, and that's the way they played. They got after the quarterback. But I tell you, Haskins was very inconsistent.
Yeah.
He throwing low balls, and for me watching the game,
he was all over.
But
the
he
map.
turned the corner. He turned the corner the second half.
There's no question. The word that jumps out at me that and it's every time they've been down in this type of game, everybody thought it was over at halftime, right?
Well, they were down 17-7,
It was
right?
17-7. It felt a little bit of a tie, but up until that point when it was 17-0.
Yeah.
But what I take out of it is the word is resilience that we really haven't seen very often.
Yeah.
All right.
Because clearly they dominated in the second half, and like you say, it was all about the defense. And
That's the strength of their football
and it
team.
started in the first half because if they go in at halftime down 17-0, you don't know exactly how it's going to shake out the second half. But the fact that the defense gets the big turnover, they convert that into points. And that was critical. I mean, they could have got the turnover and got nothing out of it. And it's like the defense, because at a point, you know this, Dexter, having played all the years you played, and it wasn't so much for my being down in D.C., because when I played in D.C., as opposed to New York, the defenses were always pretty solid. I don't remember, too many years that you'd go, the defense is going to like somehow smell it up. It was always the offense. For sure, in New York, the offense would smell it up. And the defense, after a while, they start looking at you, after about 3 and outs, they're looking at you like, what the hell are you guys? So, I can appreciate, where you're coming from, when you look at this, is had the offense not been able to get some points out of that after the defense is playing as well as, believe me, that's when you start to see a little rift can start to form on a team. And coaches got to be careful of that stuff because then it becomes us versus them.
Yeah, well, as you say, the defense made a lot of turnovers, so that means the offense playing on the short field.
Yep.
Short field, and I think that was tremendous for them. Last year, they would have never came back from a 17-point deficit.
No, we haven't seen that for quite some time.
When John and I played, we come back.
Right? 17. I'd had my analytics said 17 down. Go ahead, put it on the trailer. You know. Well, 17 down, I was on the trailer because if I recall, Dexter, I was not part of the passing game. It was like, if you saw me out there on third down, that meant every back was injured.
Well, kind of like the Eagles linemen. They were on their fourth tackle at one point. I mean, that was, like you say, high praise. They did. The Washington football team did what they had to do. They took advantage. They should have taken advantage.
Yeah.
Dexter, I'd like to see get some feedback on you, some individual performances, starting with Chase Young, first game as a pro.
Yeah, first game as a pro. I thought he was. He had a lot of hustle, but he didn't get to the quarterback like I was expecting him to. But I just thought the front four was sensational. And Ryan Kerrigan, he stepped up to the plate. I want to congratulate him. I was a little surprised when he first came in 2005 as a linebacker coming from Purdue. It's a little difficult to put your hand in the dirt.
You thought he might have been undersized?
Oh, yes. Yeah, to be putting your hand in the dirt, yes. Mm-hmm. But I thought that he played well, and hey, the guy, he's a sack guy. He's a king now.
Yeah.
Well, listen,
I don't like that too much.
Let me interrupt right now.
Okay.
Let me just say.
Go ahead.
I know Dexter Manley, and Ryan Kerrigan is no Dexter Manley. And I mean that no disrespect to Ryan Kerrigan. He's been a great football player here for a long time. But if I had to choose, and I was choosing the team, and I could take Dexter Manley at whatever age you want to take Ryan at, I'll always, of course, I got to admit now, I'll be honest with you, I'm a little prejudiced. Well, I'm very prejudiced when it comes to this.
Hey, we brothers from another mother.
This is true. But I have to say that, in my mind, when I go by, I talk about this, I go by horsepower. And Ryan's got a certain amount of horsepower. But he's not a AA fuel dragster. He's just not. He's a funny car compared to, he can maybe punch out 160, 65 in a quarter mile. Dexter's over 200 miles an hour in a quarter mile. So I always bow to horsepower because horsepower will hurt you. The guy that tries real hard and fights his guts out, that's for Joe Gibbs. That ain't for me. Give me a bastard with talent. That's what I want.
Yeah.
Yes, give me a bastard with talent.
Hey, okay. Hey, hold on. Hey.
Thank you, Dex. Thank you. I got to calm down. Boy, that made the hair stand up on the back of my neck. Hey, Dex, back at you, Dex.
We were having a little fun with you. John had to have an outburst.
Yeah, I feel kind of diminished. I'm going, hey, I got to have a point of view that's really very.
You got Dexter fired up again. Now we're in trouble.
Yeah, true.
Let him double down.
I'll give that back to you.
Let him double down.
Okay.
So anyway, I interrupted you. You were congratulating Ryan Kerrigan, as he deserves congratulations. congratulations.
Right.
He's a good kid. I mean, he is really an excellent football player, has been for a long time.
Yep.
And his name.
Class guy, all the way around. This guy has done it right.
Yeah.
So, and listen, I know how you guys both feel about records.
Mm-hmm.
Don't get me started.
Neither one of them you really care about them. I mean,
No.
I mean, listen. Everybody wants you play to get the rings, and you want to be the best that you can. And so I know that. But again, this isn't denigrating what his accomplishments whatsoever. It's phenomenal, and that shows you longevity in the league and getting it done at a high level. So congratulations.
And he was a steel man. The guy played for what, 8 years?
Without
without missing a game.
Without missing a game.
Oh yeah, he was an Iron Man.
Iron Man.
But I mean, that's like
Steel Man.
London Fletcher never did miss a game, did he?
Yeah, London Fletcher, what he has done in 16 seasons, I believe. John.
Never missed a game.
I mean, come on.
Yeah.
What are we talking? I mean, that's Cal Ripken.
But getting back to Ryan and his contributions over the years, it's what you said, Todd. He's done it consistently. You know, you can count. I mean, and that's what's kind of strange in a sort. But here he finds himself as a backup now, and that's interesting. He is in the league 12 years.
Yeah.
But this is what, once again, you go back and looking at the defense. They don't. You know, you can say the front four, but they really got front six, because you got Kerrigan and Leonidas. I know who I'm talking about. But
We're
these
back to Greek 300.
Exactly. He was ripped too, by the way. Leonidas
Shredded.
was the guy, whoever it was in the movie. I forget who
Butler,
was it?
Gerard Butler.
That's right, Gerard Butler. Very good, Todd. Anyway, that is to me, I'm going, that's a real true strength there. You've got you got six guys that you can have on the field. There's going to be very little
Like I say,
fall off
Ioannidis isn't starting.
Exactly. He was a starter last year. And actually, you could make the argument he was the best defensive lineman last year.
I agree.
And now he's on the sidelines for a certain part of the game, but he doesn't start. But I guess, if you got 4 first-round draft picks, he's a fourth-round draft pick. It's like we're going to go, it's a pecking order. You're number 4.
First rounders need to be good for it.
Across
the board.
Exactly. We got to
Across
play the first rounders. We're paying them.
So Chase Young solid in his debut. Everybody loves the energy. I think people are very excited about the potential there in the 4-3. They took advantage of a beat up Philly line. So kudos. They did what they had to do. John, what did you think?
Hold on, before we get into that, I want to interject this. I want to ask Dexter a question because I'm still kind of confused. I noticed during the game that they were flip flopping Young.
Yeah. Yes.
What I was kind of a little bit surprised by that, but I'm wondering if they realized that Philly was having to substitute other players in at different positions. We're trying to get him a particularly favorable matchup. Do you have any idea why they were doing it?
No, but I will say this: they flip flopped those two, and then they brought Ryan Anderson in more on the left side. He's another line.
Right, but they were flip-flopping Sweat and Young, right?
Yeah. Well, it's the rotation. A part of it is the rotation that they're going to use Chase Young, Kerrigan. And I think those two go on either side.
And it may have been specialized, like you say, based on Philly's injuries and the shuffling that they were doing on that O-line.
And they look to get mismatched, too. Like Jason Peterson.
Peters,
the left tackler, he's not 100%.
Right.
So you want to take advantage of that.
Yeah, no question.
I was just curious about that because I couldn't quite make. Because you were always on the right side.
Right side.
Did you ever play on the left side?
No, I didn't want to.
Not one play, not one snap.
No, not one snap. And Tampa, yes, I kind of went both sides.
Okay.
Yeah, but
you got to do what you got to do when you get to that.
Got to make a check. Yeah.
So, Riggo, on the offensive side of the ball, I know you were very happy, speaking of records and how much they matter to you and you lose sleep over them. I know that you were very happy that Adrian Peterson is no longer here to attempt to break any more of your records, tongue firmly planted in cheek.
Yeah, well, you never know.
But what did you think about the running back by committee and Dwayne Haskins' performance here for
Let me go back and
Burgundy Gold?
Okay, I'll get to the offense in just a second, and I don't want to. But you started the question a little bit earlier with Dexter. We're talking about Ryan Kerrigan breaking the record, and I don't know how Dex feels about it, but there's kind of a fine line here with football. I see football as a completely different sport than baseball, and in basketball. There's kind of a mix between basketball and baseball and football. Football is such a team sport. You've got, at any given moment, you got, 6 referees out there, or 6 officials, 7 maybe. I can't even remember how many there are now. And you've got 22 total players. There's so much going on. When you start to get into what you call individual performance, and you can see it. I mean, clearly, when you see Barry Sanders make one of his unbelievable runs, you go, well, there's a guy that's got a lot of talent. But then again, you can also say, well, when Barry was one of the most undisciplined running backs there ever was, but people will say he's also could be the very best that ever played the game. But he probably lost. I would look at the record and see how many yards did he actually lose when he was making magic, because, it wasn't a home run every time he did that stuff.
Right.
So the fact that it's entertainment, and that when you say records, there's all kinds of stuff that goes on. Give you a classic example is, who's the all-time single-season sack leader in the NFL?
Reggie White.
No,
Bruce Smith. Bruce Smith.
Nope.
I know it's just saying Deacon
He
Jones.
works for Fox on Sunday, and he's in the studio.
And he's on Good Morning America. Michael Strahan.
Michael Strahan. Now, I happened to be at the stadium the day that, or was I watching on TV? I can't remember, because I was living in New York. Green Bay's playing New York in the very last game of the season in New York. Late in the game, and I'm talking about there's only a few minutes left, and I can't remember who was up. It's obvious to me, being a former player, that Favre, instead of handing the ball off to the running back, the tight end doesn't know he's blocking run all the way, and he just basically kind of rolls out right in front of Strahan and says, tackle me for a sack, and now the record's yours. I mean, to this day, and I don't think Strahan likes to hear that. I don't know 100%, but I think that, it's almost like, had I been Michael Strahan, I'd say, you can't count that. You can't count that.
What
it's
are we
like
doing?
there's something called integrity.
What are we doing?
And that's when you destroy. And you know what? Brett Favre was such a hero at the time in the country. Not that he still isn't. But nobody would criticize him for what he did. It was ridiculous. And nobody, to this day, the NFL goes, that's in the record book. And it's like,
but it was part of a feel-good story of the marketing. And you're in the Big Apple.
Yeah, but how does that help Brett Favre?
Well, I'm saying it was Strahan.
Yeah.
It was Strahan going for the record.
Oh, so you're saying that they had a little something going on?
Yeah.
That he called him up the night before and said, hey, Brett, late in the game, if I don't have all this.
I'm not saying it was that nefarious, but...
Okay, we both know what this
I'm not
is.
saying it wasn't.
We both know what that is. Strahan not the leader. It's Reggie White with 200. Bruce Smith with 200 sacks.
No.
We're talking single season.
Yeah.
Single
season. No question.
Dexter, single season.
Okay.
Single season.
Dexter! I'm going to start using that, Dex. That might be what you might not need the pills. I'll get you off the
Scare
pills.
the hell out of me, but carry on.
Really?
Anyway, and so you look at the records, and the thing about it is that, everybody's human, and we all have egos. So when people start talking about this, it's hard to slow some people down, because they're to get into the Hall of Fame, it's all about statistics. We got to look at the statistics. I mean, I've seen so many guys with so much talent that basically they were in the wrong situation, in the wrong place at the wrong time. I'll give you a classic example. O.J. Simpson. O.J. Simpson, he plays to USC. Now, if you can't gain 2,000 yards being a tailback at USC, there's something wrong with
Back
it.
then, for damn sure.
Yeah, I mean, every Heisman Trophy winner that was an I-back, I mean, there's probably 4 or 5 of them that I can think of. I mean, you had started with Michael Garrett.
Mike Garrett.
You had Simpson. You had Allen, Marcus Allen. You had the kid that went to Tampa Bay.
White. Was that Charles White?
Yeah, there's a Charles White, and then there's the other kid that played at Tampa Bay that was drafted by, I think it was by Robinson, or not Robinson, but the guy that started it all out there, John McKay. But anyway, O.J. Simpson, he goes to Buffalo, and the first year, I think, what was his name? I can't remember the coach's name. And they use him as a decoy and do all this stuff, and, he's like, 500 or 600, 700 yards rushing. The second year, it's the same thing. They fire the coach. I want to say Roush, but it isn't Roush. It's something like that. And they bring in Lou Saban. Lou Saban had been at Denver. Who's the coach of the Broncos.
This before my time.
Yeah, it's way before your time.
This is amazing.
But I'm making a point here that before your time, that Floyd Little, who was the league leading rusher for Lou Saban in Denver, he was led the league, Hall of Famer from the University of Syracuse. Floyd, a heck of a running back. He led the league because Lou Saban, this is what we do. We're going to run the football. And this was back in the days when it was all about run the football. He goes to Buffalo. The Jets had an offensive tackle that they drafted in the second round the year before. His name was Dave Foley, went to Ohio State, played for Woody Allen. Dave couldn't really pass block that well because they never had to do it in college. All they did was run the football. But let me tell you something. You want to line up against Dave Foley and call a run, that was the guy you wanted to be behind.
I just want to make sure it's Woody Hayes, not Woody Allen.
Did I say Woody Allen?
You said Woody Allen. I'm like going,
it could have been.
He makes some movies, but I mean, it could have been.
Woody Allen.
Hey, John.
I might have to go lay down. I'm going to give myself a timeout. Woody Allen. Anyway, Woody Hayes. Correct. Woody Hayes. No, that's the wrong pill. I need a different pill. Anyway, so now I should have stayed. You should have let me stay with Woody Allen.
We got Foley from the Jets.
Foley from the Jets. They had their tight end was a guy by the name of Paul Seymour. He weighed about 275 pounds. They got Jim Braxton, who was the fullback. He weighed about 265.
It was a big man.
You had Reggie McKenzie. You had Joe DeLamiere. I mean, there was another kid from the University of Colorado that was on that team, Mike Montler. I mean,
so this was the start.
And then you had J.D. Hill, wide receiver. J.D. Hill was about 6'2", weighed about 210 pounds, and he would take your head off. I mean, this guy, he was a bad brother. Let me tell you something. J.D., I think he was in California, played at ASU, I think it was. But anyway, Simpson goes from, basically you could say, oh, this guy, Heisman Trophy winner, what's he got? He got nothing. All of a sudden, he's now been resurrected. So to me, this is show business, guys, when it's all said and done.
Yes.
I never put too much stock in the records, but at the same time, being human, you can't help but feel like, well, I guess I don't have as many yards as he does, so I guess he's supposed to be better than me. That's what it gets down to, and it's kind of one of those deals where in your mind you got to kind of look at the big picture, and the big picture is that you got paid, and if you had any kind of success at all on a team, and you won a championship, which obviously you won several.
Yeah. Hey, John, I got a question. Did you ever play out of the I back? Now, with Joe Gibbs, that's not I back because Otis Swanson was blocking for him.
Well, that was on short yardage. That was short yardage. We were in an I formation.
Yeah.
You bring it now. We got me on a kind of a semi-roll. I guess I can stay on it. Do you realize
it's your show, Riggo?
When you look at the NFL, and that we're talk about records, in my mind, I can of all the 10,000-yard rushers and above, and there's a ton of them now. I mean, when I say a ton, there's I think probably pushing 20.
But none of them is a Riggo.
No, and there's only one funky white boy in that group, too, I might add. But what I wanted to say is that except for three guys that I can think of, all of them are tailbacks.
Wow.
Jim Brown, me, and Franco Harris are the only three fullbacks that are in that whole bunch. That's got to tell you something. Yeah. That tells you how this whole thing has evolved and how, if you look at the game itself from a running back's perspective, the further a running back gets in the backfield, the bigger the advantage it is to him. Because you've seen where I used to have to sit at 5.5 yards in the backfield on Joe Gibbs' system and put my hand in the ground. When they brought George Rogers in, they allowed George because he was a tailback, he was running back. They let him stay in a 2-point stance, and they let him get back at 6.5 yards.
That's correct.
I could never understand why George Rogers, the counter tray, he ran that play like it was like he was born running that play, and I never could because he had so much more depth. He had a better relationship with Grimy and Jake when they would pull and go around the other side. That's what I'm saying. These are little things that the people that I've always got, in my mind, when you look at people who write about sports, who talk about sports, it's almost like, you get into, if you talk to anybody who does really fine work and you got some jerk off that thinks he knows about, I know about this stuff. And then you get into who really has done it and who hasn't. And that's where the rubber meets the road, because it's a whole different ball game when you play it at a certain level. And 99.9% of sports writers, sportscasters that haven't played the position. Right. I mean, that's why I didn't talk about a quarterback. I'm going to be doing play-by-play or, a color and seeing what a quarterback said. Well, he didn't see this. I'm going, I don't know. I never played at that level as a quarterback. I was a running back.
You weren't super smart, man.
I got to be. So I'm going to wind it up now, and we'll go on to the offense and just say, so records to me are, who cares? They're team records.
Right.
Individual records, that's all. It's all there for everybody to get in an argument and make it important so that we can continue to market the game. That's what it's about. It's about your money is what those records are about, not yours or mine.
Definitely not mine.
He doesn't have any, so but okay. Okay, back to the offense. Am I ready?
You're ready.
Do you want to rephrase the question, Counselor?
Okay, so what'd you think? What'd you think
I know
of
what the
Dwayne
question is.
Haskins and the running back by committee performance and the offense in general?
You got to give them credit. They weren't anything that you went, wow, it's the circus is coming to town next week. I didn't get that impression, but I saw occasionally somebody did some good things. McLaren, who really is pretty much a star from last year, you can see he's still got it going on.
Yes.
Sims didn't get a chance to do a whole lot. McKittrick, the guy that they started at tailback, he didn't really get that much action. I guess Barber's the guy that got all the carries. I think he had about 17 carries. They didn't show much. So I'm thinking the offensive line, they got pounded around a little bit early on. The left guard Wes, what I can't think of his last name off the top of my head. Martin, that's it. Good. Thank you, Dex. Yeah. I saw him actually, some guy bumped him so hard that he had to keep stumbling backwards to keep from falling down. I'm thinking actually just fall down, roll, get back up and get in the guy's face. But Wes will figure that out. You got the new tight end, not necessarily new. Well, yeah. I mean, because you replaced the guy that, with the concussions and all that stuff.
I tell you what, Logan Thomas looked really good.
He did.
And obviously Haskins was favoring him in that second half there. He got him going, and it could be that could be quite the find.
Well, and then you got Haskins himself, and as Dexter said, he was up and down. I mean, the balls, he wasn't particularly accurate, but he made plays when he had to, and so. You hang on, and that's the way, usually I thought somebody was going to say, I heard somebody say, which I never knew this to be true, but they felt like, well, maybe just for this particular team, that the defense is going to be ahead of the offense this early in the season. I don't know why that's true. Is it because you got, all these first-round draft picks in your defensive line? I don't know if that's the case, and plus you got, Landon Collins, he's a first-round draft pick. Who else is on defense? Is it the five guys in the line? I mean, I'm including Kerrigan in that and Collins.
Jonathan Allen.
No, I'm talking about all those guys. No, I'm just saying there's at least five.
From Alabama?
No. There's 5 first-round picks in the defensive line if you include Kerrigan.
Right.
The starters are all first-round picks. Kerrigan's a first-round pick. Landon Collins is a first-round pick.
Jonathan Allen. Jonathan Allen?
Yeah, but I'm counting those. But my point is, when you look at a defense that's got that many first-rounders, you would think they should be pretty good, right? And maybe,
we talked about them on paper. Paper came to life, and they did what they needed to do.
Yeah, exactly. But once again, you factor in all the other stuff. So, but to me, they always used to say that the defense, and this is true with this team, is ahead of the offense.
Right.
Somebody was saying the other night that the offense is going to be ahead of the defense at this point. I think it was one of the talking heads up in one of the booths I was listening to. But obviously that's not the case. This offense has still got room to grow. But I will say this, and I don't know. I'm guessing that Turner is the play caller, right?
Yep, he's the play caller.
He did a pretty good job. I thought that under the certain, there were some plays you went, well, that didn't work very well, but that's going to happen. But I thought he did a pretty good job of keeping the Philly defense on their heels a little bit. So, all in all, I would say that they got a C, low C or whatever like that. I wouldn't give it it certainly wasn't an A or a B performance, but I don't think it was a D. It was close to a D plus, C minus.
Well, I think you saw around the league, the one thing that stood out to me was just how inaccurate the passing was across the board. It's like what they say, in baseball, pitchers are ahead of the hitters early in the season because hitters are still finding their eye and what's going on. And I noticed that across the board for quite a few of the offenses. Quarterbacks with really bad misses. Deshaun Watson, he wasn't very good on Thursday night. He was all over the place. Kirk Cousins struggled. There was a lot of struggling out there relative to that. So,
but the actual amount of practice that went into this, obviously there were no OTAs this year, and there was no mini camps and all that stuff. So
no preseason games.
At the same time, I guess their training camp this year was about a month. It was about 4 weeks of camp they went into.
Right.
In the old days, of course, and there was, I don't know, it's hard to say because in the old days, and I'm going back, predating you here because I go back to 1971, and I think your first year was 81, right?
81.
10 years different. Hell, you'd go to camp, you hadn't touched a football in 7 months. Everybody went their own way, you never saw anybody. And in 6 weeks, you were playing a regular season football game. Well, actually, it was 8 weeks because you had 2 weeks of 2 weeks of training camp at the end of that second week, then 6 weeks of exhibition started, and then you
Imagine
started.
playing six preseason games.
Yeah, can you imagine that?
Did you guys have two-a-days? Two-a-day practices?
2 days for 2 weeks.
Yeah, right. 2 weeks.
And you hit.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
I didn't, but the team did.
He was sitting on his helmet.
He's still
If
over
that-
there filing his
Yeah.
nails.
Now he was
going,
sitting on his
"Man,
helmet."
That looks like that hurt.
He's sitting on his helmet.
I'm telling
There's
you,
some great
Dexter.
pictures of the big guy sitting on his helmet.
That's what I know.
Dexter comes in as the rookie, and he was just taking notes, going, "One day I got to get the Rigo deal,
Yeah, right.
Well,
Rigo treatment."
Well, it wasn't always like. Well, yeah, it kind of was. But the point is for a running back, it's like I got to go with Iverson on this practice.
We talking about
practice.
not a game.
No, I could never get anything out of a practice from running a football because it was. And I say this all the time, when somebody pins me down, but good Lord, the speed in the game from practice to a game, the difference is night and day. It's like a Clydesdale and a quarter horse. It's just like, whoa, what the hell happened here? Plus your own adrenaline is going and you yourself are moving some, at least I was. We talked about that, I think, where for me, I couldn't, practice was one of the things that I just couldn't. If I get scared, I think the adrenaline kicked in, and all of a sudden I was a different person. It was almost kind of like, I don't want to say superhero, but where, with the Hulk, when he got angry, what's his name, David Banner, when he got angry, he turned into the Hulk. When I got scared, I kind of turned into half a Hulk.
So Rigo had to be
I turned into
physically threatened
Yes.
or violated
Well, think about
to
it.
get him to practice.
That's what that would, yeah, if somebody had a gun out there and started shooting, I would say, oh, yeah, I can do this, hell yeah.
Like in the old Westerns dance, boy.
Yeah, that would have been it.
Dexter, did you notice the same thing relative to the speed of the game? You have always talked about it in regular season and then playoffs.
Well, there's 3 levels of speed in football, in my opinion. You got preseason, you got regular season, and you got the playoffs.
Preseason, y'all are dancing.
People, pardon me?
Y'all are dancing together,
Yeah,
you just
brother-in-law.
waltzing.
Brother-in-law. Yeah, brother-in-law. Yeah. And then when the regular season, the speed gets up a little bit more. Yeah, now playoffs, whole different ball game.
When you want to make your money.
Yeah, it's more intense. Yeah.
It is. It's funny, and I have to say that my latter years, not latter, but the last year for sure, was that the regular season was turned into practice for me.
That's
it was
correct.
Like, really, we got to do. But because once you've gotten into the, teams that get into the, I don't know how Tom Brady ever did it. To be honest with you, I got to take my hat off Tom. We can talk about him later. But the fact that this guy had went to that many Super Bowls, and then there were years, that after you've been that 3 times, and then you got to go out and play a regular season, it's like, huh? It's like, I don't get it. Really, the difference would be like what they're doing now, having to play in front of an empty stadium. I mean, I'm a sucker for adulation. I mean, even though I know it's superficial, but to have 50, 60, 70, 80,000 fans there that are either booing you, Philly, I like Philly. Hey, give me a good boo. That gets me going too, because I know you're watching and you care. It cares. It matters.
Love me, hate me, don't ignore me.
Exactly.
Hey, John, if you wanted a horse, what kind of horse would you want?
A horse?
Yeah, Clydesdale or
They always talk about an Arabian that's
I
got
hear
great
about Arabian.
speed and great stamina.
Yeah.
That would be the horse. Clydesdale depends on what I want to do. I don't
Clydesdale,
know.
that's your Budweiser drinking horse there. That's all I got.
Actually, the more I think, listen, funny you should bring up Clydesdale. About 7 years ago, we had a place in Montauk. The first ranch ever in this country is in Montauk. That's a little town on Long Island, all the way out at the very tip of Long Island. You can't
How
go
old
any
is that
further.
town?
What?
How old is it?
1600s, late 1600s.
Started this country.
Yeah. Anyway, that's where Montauk is.
Yeah.
We were talking about a Clydesdale. I'm surprised. My mind's working pretty good today. That I got back to what I originally was talking about. So we go, my brother and my oldest daughter, she liked to ride horses, and so there was a place out there, this oldest ranch in the country, that's 16-something when it was founded. It's still out there, and so they have where you can go on a horse ride. Don't you know? And I don't know who it was that put them up to it. Don't you know they gave me a Clydesdale to ride on a horseback ride? And I got to tell you, Dex, I thought I was sitting on top of the Empire State Building.
I know it.
When I looked down, I mean, this horse is so much, I don't know, this horse had to be 18, 19, 20 hands tall. I mean, it was way the hell up there. I'm thinking, man, if I fall off this horse, It's going to hurt.
Riggo down.
It was
Riggo
not,
down. Where's that Budweiser?
So Clydesdale, no. If Clydesdale pulling a wagon, no problem.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to you, Todd.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and let's talk about some of the things that we learned after week 1 across the league. Get your thoughts and opinions on some. Speaking of which, Mr. Brady,
yes,
Tom making his Tampa Bay debut. Everybody, it's an intriguing storyline. You've always said this, and the example you talked about, the O.J. Simpson example, where Saban was smart enough to have the system in place to allow him to thrive with great people in front of him. Who knows? Ryan Kerrigan, sadly, his career here, it's been chaotic based on the team, right?
Correct.
Right.
So everybody wants to know, is it Belichick or is it Brady?
Yeah.
Is it Brady or is it Belichick?
And both of those guys want to know it too.
Yeah, which is why we got it going on. So Tommy Terrific did not have a very good debut, threw a couple of picks. They got beat by Drew Brees and the Saints 34-23, and one of my buddies was doing play-by-play of that game and said that he did not look good at all.
I watched that game.
Did you?
Yeah, he didn't look good.
Yeah.
I saw parts of it as well.
Okay.
He was, I saw the pick 6. I have to say this, and this is probably just his persona, but looking from the outside, you can take any movie, pick a movie. Actually, the guy that was in, who was it, with Ralph? And the guy that taught him how to do karate.
Mr. Miyagi?
Yeah.
Karate Kid.
The Karate Kid. Remember the blonde-headed kid that was just...
Yeah, he's the typical California punk that everybody wants to beat up.
Getting back to what I was saying. So this is his persona. So it's almost as if Tom Brady's persona to me is a guy that if somebody accidentally, they played on a rainy day and somebody ran past him and splattered a little mud on his shoes, he'd go,
"How dare you?
This is so uncivilized.
This isn't that elite quarterbacky."
Yeah, you don't treat someone like me this way. That's the way he comes across to me. And I don't know Tom at all, so he could be he could be a good old boy for all we know.
You think he'd have been in the 5 o'clock club?
He doesn't look like a member, but who knows? I mean,
maybe he and Joe might have been having their own little club.
On first blush, I'm going, no, I don't think so, Tom. But you never know. Who knows? Maybe he gets all fired up. He's a whole different critter. But what I wanted to say was, so knowing that about a guy, it gives you particular, and this is, you watch it for entertainment purposes, for whatever reason it satisfies whatever inadequacies that are in your own mind. But when he threw that pick 6, I mean, just watching the look of disgust on his face.
He's probably, Giselle's probably going to be like, the receiver did not make the full route.
Exactly.
My husband did not.
Where's she from?
And he yells at people. He's always yelling.
Brazilian.
He's yelling at people and all this stuff.
Yeah.
Right. I'd have a short fuse. I never had a quarterback yell at me, but I would have had a short fuse on that.
Yeah, I don't see many quarterbacks
but
to
he's
have
got
a word with the big guy.
I would have been. No, I'm not a tough guy. Don't get me wrong, but I said, lay off that crap, okay? This ain't gonna work.
All right, so the New England Patriots, they take care of business of the Miami Dolphins 21-11 with Cam Newton in the Cam Newton era getting it done. Now check out this stat, John. By
the way, did you see his outfit? After the game,
yellow,
that's Superfly.
I thought he was like
he
is Superfly or a bumblebee. I can't tell for sure which. Just a little bit of black on there, and he looked like a bumblebee.
It's kind of a Dexter sweater, Listen, we're going to have some photos up on this vodcast here as well, because you guys were pretty flamboyant with your threads back in the day. So, kids, you can learn something here.
Yeah.
So Cam Newton rushed for 75 yards and 2 touchdowns, right? That's the most by a Patriots quarterback since Steve Grogan had 81 in 1977. So Tommy's not really, he was never getting out of that bubble. And the NFL kind of built a halo around him.
There you go.
So he could play flag football back there, a little 7-on-7.
Yeah.
But so Cam got it done. I'm sure Bill's feeling pretty good. Said, hey, how Tommy do down south?
And it's funny too, because Newton isn't the quarterback. When I say quarterback, he's not the passer.
Right.
And I guess that Brady is, but all of a sudden he comes there, and who's I can't think of their offensive coordinator.
Sean something.
Yeah. But he was
Sean something. Daniels.
Who?
Oh, you think Josh McDaniels?
Josh McDaniels. I think he's their offensive coordinator.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah.
And so all of a sudden, here you've had Brady for 20 years. Well, I don't know if McDaniels had that long. Certainly, Belichick has. And all of a sudden, now you got a quarterback that basically the best part of his game is actually running the football, and he can throw. So I would think, all of a sudden, it's like, my God, you've been handed another tool. The one that isn't quite as sharp as it used to be, but you've got another one that you can get a lot of mileage out of, and nobody's expecting this. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how.
Well, it's the triangular. You're going to find out who's good for what, because Cam, he was on the precipice, that 15-1 magical season back in 15. Yeah. And, under Ron Rivera, and they couldn't get it done, so it's a resurrection. He signed a very small contract.
Yeah, they got him for little or nothing.
Yeah, but pretty much. So you got three guys with some serious egos and motivations involved. It's going to be fun to watch.
Now, getting back to Brady, which is kind of interesting, they said going into this season, and I think one of Evans, was a little bit nicked up, right, Mike Evans? But supposedly Tampa is loaded with talent on offense,
incredible.
So it's almost as if it's kind of weird because they always talked about how Brady had no talent around him in New York or in Boston.
It was a revolving door. Typically it didn't have the household names that clearly Tampa Bay does.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of, but here this gets into the whole thing that I always created. The press once again has created that illusion. Those guys were a hell of a lot better than everybody gave them credit for that were catching passes for Tom Brady. Brady got all the credit. And just over year after year, but just by the very fact that he stayed there so long and kept performing.
And a stout defense, you don't win all those Super Bowls.
Exactly.
Again, it speaks to the system and getting the right guys in the right place to get it done.
Well, I'm curious because I've always said, now Tom Brady didn't go to, say, the Browns, but even the Browns are improved. But, think of a team that's on its last legs or whatever.
Let's go right into the Browns right here, John, because do you realize after they got their butts kicked and looked horrific, and Baker Mayfield, I mean, you talk about a guy who was terrible and getting just crushed on Twitter. So they get their butts kicked 38-6. Cleveland hasn't had an opening seasoning win in 17 years.
Why do they stay with
Where
Baker
did they play?
Mayfield?
Did they play on the road?
It was this was in Baltimore, I believe.
Okay.
All right, so we're going to keep it moving right along, guys, here as the Arizona Cardinals. I think everybody was majorly upset, or this was the biggest upset of the week, as they beat San Francisco 49ers 24-20 in San Francisco. No home field advantage except no fans and a lot of smoke. The air quality out there is really bad with these fires, and the league's keeping an eye on it because this stuff is. They may have to cancel some games. The air is so bad.
Well, years ago, this has been probably 15, maybe 20 now. Remember the fires in San Diego that they had to move? They moved that game. But they had a game there and they moved it over to Arizona because the quality was so bad. And I would think if you're a player, if you're out there really huffing and puffing and you're breathing in smoke from a fire that's in the area, you can tell it. I'm going, I don't know about that. And the way things are going now, you'd think that if the players got together and said, we don't think that the air quality is good enough, we're not going to play, they'd go, okay. So I don't know. We'll wait and see. But I agree with you. The fact that the Cardinals, they actually, I don't know, preseason, I didn't really check any of this stuff out, polls or any of that stuff. But right now people are talking like the Cardinals may be one of the better teams in the NFL, or at least in the NFC. In the top 4 or 5 teams in the NFC, so that tells you a little bit. Kyler Murray, the second-year quarterback, he's going to grow by leaps and bounds over what he did last year.
And I think they have a good, strong defense, the Cardinals.
Well, yeah, they must if they're holding down, the San Francisco 49ers at home to 20 points. And then what? Cliff Kingsbury, isn't that his name? The coach.
Yes.
That this guy. He knows how to put points on a board, so it's going to be
with
interesting.
DeAndre Hopkins that they got for a can of soup from the Texans, and he had a career high 14 catches. I mean, they could keep an eye on them.
And they gave him a new deal.
Oh, yes, they did. A very lucrative deal. And we're going to get into some of those NFL record-setting salaries
here. I think you and I can come out of retirement if I get some of them big lucrative deals.
How'd we start the show today, Dex? I said I felt great, really felt good. I don't feel that good. I would probably I can say this. I will never feel that good.
Yeah. Well, Lisa Marie, I could talk to her. You'll feel good there. The boss.
Yeah, the boss might. Yeah, okay.
Get your buns back out there.
I might. Well, I won't feel good, but I'll do it. Let's put it that way.
Right.
Well, I will give you the early line as this podcast is recorded on Tuesday, September 15th, and we'll be back this Friday with more of a preview heading into the game is out at Arizona, and the Vegas likes the Cardinals laying 6.5.
Well, that tells you a little bit about this past Sunday's game.
No question.
That they got Las Vegas's attention. That all of a sudden they're looking, and it's all about the defense. They're thinking, well, maybe this defense, and this will be a great test in a lot of ways. But like you said, we can do all this on Friday because there's going to be more information available.
So we're going to check out on this episode of The Diesel, the John Riggins podcast. Tune back in on Friday. We're going to get deep into the Burgundy and Gold, see how their practice week has gone, latest on injuries. We'll see what the boys in Vegas think about this, and they'll be going out there 4 o'clock this Sunday. We'll tune in. We'll be dropping this podcast for you on Friday, 6 o'clock.
All righty.
Who you picking for Sunday, John?
Can't get in that soon. We're going to wait for Friday.
Oh, Friday. I'm sorry. You got it.